Thank you, and please join me in welcoming Mr. Weinstein.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. I'm going to read 3 job descriptions of 3 different jobs in the court management world, and I want you to think about what, if anything, these 3 job descriptions have in common. Okay, the first one, and these are actual job descriptions that I took right out of Monster.com and some other places. I didn't doctor it at all. This is for an administrative or criminal clerk in upstate New York. The right candidate will have customer service skills, computer skills, and organizational skills. Seeking someone who can successfully perform the following tasks or scope of responsibilities. 1, customer service to judges, attorneys, and public. 2, scanning files and court file documents. And 3, maintaining probation paperwork. Would anyone like me to repeat that? Okay. The second job is for a municipal court manager in Northeast Texas. You must have 4 years of municipal court experience or a BA in business administration. You must have a working knowledge of city ordinances and the education code. And you must have an ability to prepare, read, interpret, and implement court policies and procedures. And finally, this is for a freelance court reporter in the Pacific Northwest. To get this gig, you need certified shorthand reporter's license, and you must be client service oriented. You must accurately transcribe what you're asked to transcribe, and you must have knowledge of professional standards, procedures, and ethics. Knowledge of professional standards, procedures, and ethics. Do these 3 job descriptions have anything in common, yes or no? I'll read them again. Number 1, yes, read them again. Do they have anything in common, yes or no? Simple yes or no question, yes or no. What do they have in common?
They're asking for people to apply for jobs.
They're asking for people to apply for jobs. Yes. What are they looking for in a broad sense? What kind of people are they looking for? Wait, did someone say ethical? You said ethical? Could you say a little more about that?
Well, I think I heard the term ethical in each job description.
No, you heard the term ethics once, and I'm going to read that again because this is extreme. No, this is the heart of the matter. This is the heart of the matter. The only time I use, to my knowledge, the only time I use the word ethics is the freelance court reporter. At the very end, they stick in that you have to know something about professional standards, procedures, and ethics. That you have to know something about that. You know who knew a lot about business ethics? Bernie Madoff. In fact, I was asked to go on the Today Show, and I didn't get the message until the day after because I was doing one of those stupid digital Sabbath things where I wasn't looking at my phone. And there was a message Monday saying, this is a producer at the Today Show, and if you get this message on Sunday, we'd like to book you. If you get it on Monday, then forget it. Thanks a lot. No, because I had the best soundbite in the world. You want to hear it? Apparently, Bernie Madoff was being considered to teach a business ethics course at Harvard. So I was going to say, Bernie Madoff teaching business ethics is like Hannibal Lecter teaching a cooking class. See, now that would have been like, and I blew it. Anyway, I get to use it. So, no, it's not asking for anybody to be ethical. It isn't. What these job descriptions are looking for is people with 2 basic qualifications. Knowledge and skill, right? You have to know something about court reporting. You have to be able to transcribe things. But now, would you say it's important to be knowledgeable and skilled in whatever field you're working in? I have to know something about ethics, and I wanted to learn about what you do, so I educated myself by reading the NACM Code of Ethics and so forth to do my job. But suppose that I was the most educated person on the NACM Code of Ethics around, but I showed up late, I left early, and I showed up drunk. But I know my stuff. I mean, I really know your Code of Ethics. What's missing? Why? And in fact, it's not just court management. It's not just your industry. Every single one. Take a look at any job description. It always boils down to knowledge and skills. Is there anything else, though, if you were hiring a court administrator, a court reporter, a freelancer to work for you or with you, is there anything in addition to knowledge and skills you think might be kind of important to have in an employee? Yes, ma'am. Integrity. Wouldn't that be something? So I've been on a mission for the last couple of years to find out why, in heaven's name, job descriptions don't talk about this. So I asked leaders all over the world, and what I heard was variations on the following theme. We just assume that they're that they're honest to begin with. Isn't that a dangerous assumption? Have you ever seen anyone let go at any place you've ever worked because they were dishonest? Why not bring it up at the job interview? I also heard this, well, it's really uncomfortable to talk about these things. Well, I'm sorry. But if you're not comfortable bringing it up, there was a CEO on 60 Minutes last year who said the problem with employment in the United States is that we hire for competence but fire for character. Why not hire for character and competence? I'm on a personal mission to take this message around the world because I don't understand why character isn't a part of the application process. So what you're going to learn today is threefold. You're going to learn how to find people of high character work for you. Anybody looking for a job right now? Don't. Well, I teach this class called How to Absolutely Positively Ace Your Job Interview. So what if you ever decide to look for a job, what we're going to learn today is going to put you ahead of the pack. And if you want to raise a promotion, talking about character during that process will also put you ahead of the pack because I guarantee no one else is going to be doing this. No one else is going to be looking for people specifically with respect to character. If you're applying for a job, no one else is going to be mentioning this, talking about it, telling stories about how they exemplify the qualities of high character. And if you're trying to move ahead in your organization, I guarantee you'll be the only person talking about it. Did you want to say something? Oh, hang on a second. Let's get the mic to you because, but we're being recorded, so.
I think we do check for character. I think that's what our reference checks are doing.
Reference checks. Let's talk a little bit about that. And okay, so here's the good news about everything I'm going to tell you. Look, we have an hour and 15 minutes. This material really requires 2 full days. But the good news is you all have a copy of the book on which this talk is based, so this is going to be a broad overview. References. What do you think about references as a way of checking for character? Why is it that well, let me ask you this. If I'm applying to work for you, what references am I going to give you? The people who think I'm a creep? My ex-girlfriends? No, in fact, you see in the book, I was looking for an assistant because I just am too busy to do all this myself. And this woman applied, and I asked her for references. She gave me 3, and 2 of the numbers didn't work. That should have told me something right there, but she was beautiful, so I let myself be blinded by that. And the 3rd one, this guy made her sound like a combination of Mother Teresa and the most gracious first ladies and Mahatma Gandhi. I mean, this woman could do no wrong, right? And so I wanted to ask her, well, how do you know this person? And he hemmed and hawed. Eventually, he said, well, I'm her fiance. I hired her anyway, and she quit in a week when something better came along. She quit in 1 week. So much for references. Now, I can tell that you're furious at me for what I'm saying. Well, you want to pass this?
I believe you need to drill down a little bit. If you're just going to ask for the 3 references, call her fiance, and that's going to be it, then obviously you're going to get a glowing recommendation. My thing is you know which court they're from, or you know where they're coming from in their professional world. It's not unethical to call that company and drill down. Hey, what do you know about her? Just give me, and they're going to give you the standard, but you can find out from the standards, at what level what level was she hired at? Did she progress through the company and their time there? Start reading between the lines, drill down, try to find a little bit.
I just want to add, I formerly was the clerk of court, and I supervised about 140 employees with subordinate supervisors, and I can tell you that, sadly, even our internal supervisors wouldn't give fully candid references to their peers. And, well, because they probably wanted to get rid of the employee. In some cases, I think they were eager to get rid of the bad performing employee.
On the bottom. Testing one. Okay. Did you still want to say anything more?
No.
Okay. So anyway, we'll pass this around. I asked this fellow Alan Murray, who was managing director of the Wall Street Journal and Washington bureau chief for CNBC and president of the Pew Research Center, and now he's editor of Fortune. How do you do it? And he said, you know, I'm always afraid when I let someone go that their next employer is going to call me and find out why'd you let the guy go. And he said, you'll see in the book, the call never comes. And one of the reasons the call never comes, I think, is because people are used to hearing platitudes, right? When you call and find out, in fact, a friend of mine who was a chief counsel for a major airline said, legally, all we can say is that they worked here, when they left, and what their position was. So that's what you're going to get. Why should you have to read between the lines? That's a lot of work. And sometimes, as we all know by our dating history, I'm going to go back to that because that's really the basis of all of this. Have you ever been misled on a date? You're drilling down, to use your term. I didn't use that term. I'm just repeating, like, you think like, oh, this is wonderful, and then you find out later this person is a lunatic. I did my best, but so what we're going to look, and I interviewed at the very beginning of this project. I interviewed a guy who is known for his whole research line in organizational psychology is on how to hire people, and he said he refused to participate in this project because he said I don't think you can guarantee that the questions you ask are going to lead to someone of high character. And I agree, but you can increase the likelihood that you're going to find out a little more about this person than simply what the references say or not say. I'm not throwing this out, sir. I'm just saying we might need to supplement that approach. Okay, I got you in mid-bite. Did you want to say something else?
I think the questions you asked during the interview could help you determine the person's character.
The questions what's your name? Steve. Is that your real name? I don't know. Yes, the questions you ask can help to find this out, and that's what the book that you all have will help you to do, and you're going to have some opportunities to answer some of those questions, present them to the group, and then get some feedback from it. So let's toggle over here now, since I'm learning how to use it. Okay, we go to slideshow. I'm calling this session the good ones. This term has a couple of meanings. First, the good ones. Have you ever heard that term before? She's one of the good ones. In what context have you heard it? I'd never heard it until I left my job. I wish I'd heard it at the beginning. Maybe I wouldn't have left my job. But this fellow I worked with, and I didn't even know he liked me that much, but he said, Bruce, you're one of the good ones. And I'd never heard that term before where I thought, now that's something I want to live up to. I want to be that. And I'd never heard that term, but then I started hearing it a lot. And so the good ones refers to people of high character you can count on. But it also refers to the qualities that make somebody you can count on. So the good ones are the qualities of high character people as well as the high character people themselves. So without any further ado, let's take a look at these qualities. I'll tell them to you up front. We're not going to have time to look at all 10. Again, it's in the book, but I did leave space in the handout for you to write these down should you so choose. The first and by far the most important quality of high character people is honesty, because it doesn't really matter how much you know or how much you can do if you're fundamentally a liar. Right? Number 2 is accountability. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means to be accountable. 3, to care. High character people are also people of courage. Not in a physical sense, in a moral sense. High character people are committed to being fair. They're also fundamentally grateful people. They're humble. They're loyal. they're patient, and they have presence. This is the term that might be the least familiar on the face of it and also the most confounding. And in fact, it's not really a moral quality as such, but it enables us to be loyal and grateful and humble people. Some people use the term mindful or focus to refer to presence. I just, as you'll see in the book, I explain why I picked that one. But let's start with the most fundamental. Oh, and actually, so why should, and actually one of the people I interviewed is a producer for ABC News, or was a producer, and she said, before you start talking at all about who these high character people are, I would want to know, why should an employer even care about it? So I've come up with 5 benefits to companies in hiring high character people, and if you're looking for a job, this is what you'll want to say when you're applying for the job in terms of how you will help them. Too often I find when people are looking for a job, they like to talk about their knowledge and skills, but they're not really talking about how can I apply these skills to help the company meet its mission. Number 1, these are in no particular order, high character people are morale boosters. They're nice people to have around. They bring out the best in you, right? They're the people who are grateful. They're the people who are humble. They're the people who are always rooting for you. Number 2, high character people tend to be productive. And what my research showed, the research that I didn't conduct but that I studied and present in the book, is that surprisingly, people who are grateful people who consistently practice gratitude on a daily basis, a regular basis, like the kind of exercise that we did, and I'm already seeing by some amazing responses from what people have been saying. But grateful people tend to be more productive than ungrateful people. There's a guy named Robert Emmons from University of California, Davis, who's here from California. Anyone here from the great state of California? This professor of psychology at UC Davis, all of his research is just on gratitude. And he wrote a really cool book called Thanks, with an exclamation point, and it's about the research that he's done that shows, and other research that he's cited, that shows how being a grateful person enriches your own life as well as the people you express gratitude to. High character people are loyal. They stick around, unlike the woman I hired. Now, the thing is, there's nothing wrong with jumping ship from time to time, right? But it's how you do it. It's how you let the person know. And high character people, if they don't stick around for the entirety of their careers, at least they go about making the move with integrity. High character people also enhance the lives of the people they work with, the people they work for, and the people who work for them. Did you read this book, The 1 Minute Manager? By Ken Blanchard. There's a new version of it, and the title of the new book is, surprisingly, The New 1 Minute Manager. This guy is so cool. I just interviewed him for a podcast. He's really cool, but he talks about upending the traditional management model. The traditional management model holds that you're supposed to criticize people who are your direct reports, and the people beneath you are supposed to praise you. And he said, it actually should be the other way around. You should be encouraging criticism, because that's how strong leaders find out what's going wrong with what they're doing, and they listen to it. And they also take time to praise the people working for them on a regular basis. And finally, high character people reflect well on the mission of the organization, on your clients, on the people you work for, on the community. They make the place look as good as it can possibly be. So those are 5 specific benefits. In the book, I tell lots of stories that exemplify this, but you're going to be telling us some stories that show how this is exemplified in your own life. So let's take a look at the most important one, honesty. Anybody ever see the movie Patton? If this is your homework assignment, don't go to YouTube because it's intellectual property theft. Just rent the movie Patton, and I just want you to look at the opening scene. George C. Scott is presenting as General George S. Patton, presenting to the audience as though you were a member of his platoon. And it's basically a morale-boosting speech. But he says the following statement in this speech. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. Americans love a winner and will not tolerate a loser. It's not what he says, it's the way George C. Scott says that I want you to pay attention to, because that's how honest people regard the truth. Honest people have a contempt for lying in all of its forms. Lying is a kind of a poison to honest people. I have goosebumps right now, really. And they love truth, and the idea of lying, even as a joke, even maybe for short-term benefit, it just is anathema to honest people. And so that's why I want you to watch the movie Patton, to just get a sense of the passion with which he talks about that. So in the book, I talk about, I was interviewing a compliance officer at Goodwill Industries in Virginia. And it was a long, far-ranging interview. And like a lot of these interviews that I conducted, the person will just sort of mention something offhandedly, and I'll say, wait a minute. This is important. This woman mentioned an employee in Parisburg, Virginia. Have you ever heard of that? Parisburg, Virginia? Population 2,400 people. A woman there named Brenda Harry last year was working at the Goodwill store. She had worked for decades in the furniture store until it closed, so this was the job she got, minimum wage, processing clothes. She was going through the pockets of this jacket, and she found 4 envelopes containing $3,100 in cash. What do you think she did? What's that? She turned it in. And I wanted to know why. Do you think this is something everybody would do? Do you think this is something most people would do? We don't really have any way of knowing, right? Because the crooks aren't going to tell you that. Actually, some folks actually brag about it. They'll brag about it on social media, but it's really hard to get a sense of, I would like Anne Frank, I would like to believe in my heart that most people are good. I don't know. I'm from New York. I don't know if this is true. All I know is that this woman turned it in, and I wanted to know why. And so it reminded me actually of, you remember that show Firing Line? William F. Buckley had the show in the 70s and 80s. You know, for the young folks in the audience, William F. Buckley was this arch conservative. He wrote a book called God, Man, and Yale. I'm not saying I like his views or dislike his views, but he was interviewing Mother Teresa. Speaking of Mother Teresa, the real mother, not the woman who wanted to work for me, the real Mother Teresa was on the line. And William F. Buckley was saying, so, you know, why do you do that? Why do you so selflessly devote yourself to helping people? And she said, it's God's will. And he said, well, I know that, but can you give me some more? That was all she could say. And so I asked Brenda Harry, why did you return the money? And she said, it didn't belong to me. And I thought there'd be a story. No. Wait a minute. Help me to understand this. This is more than 2 months of your salary. Nobody would have known. Apparently, you know, what happens a lot in Goodwill drop boxes is family members will be clearing out the closet of someone who just died. And they'll just shove all the clothes in there. And there's no way to trace who it belongs to or belonged to. So she said, now this is a woman in her early 60s. She said, when I was in my 20s, I was at a drive-in and I saw a sailor get out of this thing they used to have called phone booths. And he got out of the phone booth and his wallet fell out and he got into a car and drove off. And I looked into his wallet and I saw that it was all of his papers that he needed to fight, I guess, Vietnam. And she said immediately she gave the wallet to her mom, who called the sailor's mother, who was so grateful because he needed those papers to leave. And so this woman had a history of doing it. This is one of the things about high-character people. They do these things consistently. This woman had a history of being honest. And so I asked her, you know, tell me about how you grew up. She said, well, my parents said, if you're honest, you will be rewarded on Judgment Day. And if you're dishonest, you'll be punished for eternity. So I said, so you're a religious person then? And she said, no, I'm not. I said, well, you go to church then? Nope. She said, I haven't been to church in years. She'd never left her state. She'd never really left her city. This is just who she was. Now, let me ask you this. If you were you're interviewing a bunch of different people, wouldn't you want someone like Brenda Harry on your team? Just someone who's that committed to being honest? Okay, so with that in mind, do you have access to the handout? Okay, so, well, then I'm going to read an exercise, but you at least have something to write on. I want you to do the following exercise. Now, we're going to assume that you're applying for a job, and then I'll ask for a volunteer or two to present this to the group. Please describe an honest thing you've done in a previous job or elsewhere that shows you're committed to doing the right thing even when no one else would know the difference. I'll say it again. Please describe an honest thing you've done in a previous job or elsewhere that shows you're committed to doing the right thing even when no one else would know the difference. Please take a moment and write your story. You can also talk about something you've done in this job if it's been a while since you've had another job. Okay, now we have a unique opportunity for a couple things. If you are thinking of looking for a job, this will give you useful feedback. But if you're looking to hire someone, this will help you refine, as our friend, the drill down fellow, what is your name again, sir? Steve was saying, to really focus on the right kinds of questions and how you ask them. So who would like to present their story about an honest thing they've done? Yes, sir, please come up here. Yes, yes. Oh well. Yeah. You'll stand. Okay, but the. Where's the? Okay, but you have a minute. Okay, and then you get the wrapping chicken. You have 1 minute. Testing. Okay, and let them know. This is Roderick, everybody. Okay, go for it.
Basically, in short, I worked on a process that resulted in refunding 30 customers money that was improperly assessed at a court. So I found an error. I discussed it with my presiding judge, told him it was wrong, and gave him options on how to get that money back to the customers, and that was it.
What questions do you have for Roderick? And I assume you're. Wait, no, really. You didn't know Now, do you regret doing this?
Pretty much.
You regret it? You don't have to. You don't want to answer.
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
fine.
Well, here's your sticker before you get too angry. So you're interviewing Roderick for a position, and he's just told you about this story. What else would you want to know? Who is that? Is that good enough? So hire him. Yes. Okay. Now we're going. All right.
How were you able to assess that money for refund? Did you have employees that come to you to tell you, look, there's an overbalance, or how did you assess that?
Well, we didn't even find it at the allocation stage. We found it early after the customers were leaving the courtroom. And but they would come to fines enforcement. They couldn't pay the fine, or they tried to negotiate a fine. We saw that the disposition codes and the event codes we were in the case management system were although they were timely, some of them were being put in as an assumption that the individual was going to get on a payment plan that required a time payment fee that was mandated by state.
Anybody else? Questions for up? I'll come over here. Yes, ma'am.
What options did you present to the judge, and what would your reaction have been if one of the options was not giving refunds?
Well, you would go into ethical things if we didn't report it. So we reported the options that I gave the judge was that, obviously he would have to talk to his presiding judges, make sure that we're all on the same page, and make sure that all the courtrooms was doing the same thing. So that required the court managers, court administrators' input. And after investigation, MAS standards and investigation, we found out that it was the right thing to do. We tried to put a cap on it once we found it, to go back as far as we could when we noticed it. And then we had addresses based on contracts and personnel files, and was pretty real. Of course, we had to get the money to do it. But
Yes, ma'am. Over here. Then one more question.
Did you get positive feedback from those individuals, and were you glad that you found the error and corrected it?
I was glad that I found the error, that my team, we worked, got authorized overtime to investigate it and get it done. Gave, at that particular time, was called Superior Performance Awards to the staff for the people that found that. The no feedback from the customers as far as expectation or them getting a surprise amount of money back in their check, but kind of irked a few judges off, though.
What did you do to prevent this from happening again?
We just looked at our policies and procedures and focused on training and made sure that it was done, that, it was our responsibility fiscally and ethically to do the right thing.
I was going to cut it at that, but we have some more questions. So,
Linda, is your programmer that worked on your case management system still employed?
Actually, the program was still employed. That wasn't the issue. It was a manual entry type of thing. So it reflected on the actual bailiffs that put the money in.
You said something about the judges being a bit turked off or something.
Irked. Yeah. Well, there was an assumption that the process that what they were doing was correct. So it was their mentality, old school mentality versus what was written law. So I had to basically get the book, highlight the book, show my judge, you're not going to like this. These are the people that are doing it, but this is what it says.
So they didn't want to give the money back? Is that what?
It was a right or wrong thing between the judge and. There you go.
That's what I thought you meant. How about a round of applause for Robert? Now, this back and forth really helped you understand a little more about what Roderick said. I mean, he spoke. I wasn't even able to give him the wrapping chicken cutoff. He after 20 seconds. This is what we're talking about. Richly detailed stories that reveal specifically how, in this case, someone did an honest thing. Well, what about pathological liars? I mean, what if you were interviewing a Tony Soprano? We've all known them. Some of us have dated them, right? It's very difficult. This system is not foolproof. Sometimes you're going to get, I'm not you. You have an honest face, sir, but it's look, a couple of people are going to get through but this is really helpful because Roderick gave you specific, concrete information. It's difficult to lie about that. Not impossible, but difficult. But yes, and also, honesty is the most important thing. That's why it's number one. But as we'll see, there are other things worth talking about. Now, the thing is, most employers are not going to bring this up themselves, and that's why if Roderick were looking for a job, I would recommend that he volunteer to talk about that. I'm not only knowledgeable and skilled in court management. Here's an example of how I'm so committed to honesty, I did something that was that difficult for you to do or easy for you to do? Can you see other people? Well, why don't more people do that? That sort of thing. And also, that's to your credit. The more that you do this, the easier it becomes. And so high character people are consistently doing the kind of thing that you did. And I'll bet if we were to ask you, there are more examples like that in your life. Maybe not at work, but in your personal life, right? Other things that you've done. So that's the sort of thing that savvy employers look for. You're not just looking for the knowledgeable and skilled court reporter, court administrator, but someone who is committed to honesty. Let's look at accountability. Accountability means a couple of different things. It means keeping your promises, but have you ever heard the saying, success has many parents, but orphan is a failure? A failure is an orphan? So accountability doesn't really speak to taking responsibility for the great things you've done. All you have to do is peruse Facebook, and you just see plenty of examples of people talking about how great they are, their latest accomplishments. I do the same thing. There's this culture of narcissism that we love in Facebook in which we talk about all these wonderful accomplishments. But what we don't hear much about is how someone takes responsibility for things that weren't so great. That's where accountability comes in. When I was in grad school, I was assigned to grade 88 blue books for a professor I worked for who had given me a fellowship, basically paying for my education. And I remember getting home and looking everywhere for these blue books, and I couldn't find them. I looked everywhere, and the only thing I can think of is I must have thrown them out somehow. I don't even know how I would do that, but I must have thrown them all out or left them somewhere. And so I was then thinking about all the creative ways I could lie about what had happened to my professor. And then I thought, I'm getting a PhD in ethics. Maybe I should tell the truth. Because I actually couldn't think of a good excuse. But I was afraid. I was afraid he'd take the fellowship away. I was afraid he would be angry. But if you like the Andy Griffith Show, there's a wonderful episode called Opie Wins a Medal. And it's where Andy Griffith says to his son, if you keep doing this nasty thing you're doing, I'll be disappointed in you. I didn't want to disappoint this professor. So I screwed up the courage. I told him, I'm Jewish. This was a Catholic school. He told me about some patron saint that looks after people who have lost things. Is it St. Anthony? So he told me to pray to St. Anthony, and I said, does the name Weinstein sound like someone who would pray to St. Anthony? But the weirdest thing is what didn't happen. He didn't get angry. He was upset, of course. Who wouldn't be? But he said, you're just going to have to let the class know that, that won't be counted. And then the strangest thing happened. So this must have been 1986. Then in the early 90s, when I was a professor, my assistant did the same thing. But she didn't know about this. It wasn't like, oh, I'll show him what it's like. But it was because that had happened, that I had done that myself, that I felt probably worse for her than I would have ordinarily. And when she came to me and said, look, we went on some retreat with the university, and she said, Bruce, I won't be able to get through this weekend if you're angry at me. And I said, look, we all make mistakes, not a problem. But it was only because that had happened to me that I think I was able to find the compassion to let her off the hook. She took responsibility for it. So your exercise now is to describe a situation in which you took responsibility for a mistake you made. What were the consequences to you for doing so? This can be at work. It can be in a previous job. It can be outside of work. But again, please describe a situation in which you took responsibility for a mistake you made. What were the consequences to you for doing so? Please take a moment to do that. I'm having fun. Are you? Thank you. Only one person left, so I think we're doing okay. Who would like to present their story about accountability? Thank you, ma'am. Please come up. Where's the, okay. Oh, fresh in the mind. Fresh in the, here.
So I work for an elected official. She's the clerk of court, and she's sued every week. So the county attorney represents her. She depends on me. She had an answer that was due on Friday. So we take the verification to her, and I'm like, okay, can you just sign this? Well, I never knew that she reads the answer before she signs the verification, because she always just signs it because I say it's okay. So this time, but she does go behind me. I never knew this. So this time, I got it mixed up with another answer. So I was like, just sign it. And she was like, I need a copy of the answer. I'm like, why? She said, because I read. I said, you don't trust me. I can't believe, I don't have time for this. Just sign it. She's like, Shay, I need the answer. So I'm like, whatever. So she reads the answer. It's something I've never seen. Everything was wrong. He admitted to this allegation, denied this one. It was all wrong. I mean, out of 40, it was maybe 25 that were wrong. And so she said, get the county attorney here. We go over it. I am so embarrassed. Like, I can't believe, I'm like, I thought it was the other person, not this case. And so that night, I just had to stay. I apologized. I went through every allegation and made sure that every answer, I mean, I had to take responsibility for it, and I just felt so bad. So now I have to figure out, is she ever going to trust me again? Is she ever going to sign anything I put in front of her because of this mistake?
And your name is Che?
Shay.
Shay? Would you trust Shay? I would, because you told a whole room of people. Do you know everyone in this room?
I know a few.
Well, I think that takes a lot of guts. What you did.
I don't do that. That is not who I am. Right, and so I'm really about getting it done, and she really trusts me. I advise her on things, and I got it mixed up. It was one defendant. I mean, I talked to the county attorney, but it wasn't about this case. I said, I went line by line. Can you not? And then when I saw it, and she was like, well, he said that, shouldn't I have known if he filed that? And I was like, yeah. Well, why did he deny and say I don't have any knowledge? And then after I was like, oh my God.
This is a big deal what you did.
No, it's a major.
No, I think this is how about a round of applause for what Shay did? That you took responsibility for it. Now, if you did this habitually, then
it's never happened before.
Well, I mean, don't we all? Gosh, my mistakes are a lot worse than these.
So
I think it's so. What your questions for Shay? Who has a what would your questions for Shay be? What would your question be?
I'm like Roger.
Okay,
now,
okay.
Please don't give her the mic.
No. Uh-oh. Whoa.
No, I was just going to ask you, did you talk with your clerk of the court afterwards and let her know that, that you had not seen it, that you actually had not seen the answer, and you apologized and took responsibility with her?
Two things. First, I cursed the county attorney out. Like, how dare you? No, it was a new county. Everything was mixed up.
Okay.
He's not the county attorney I talked to. It wasn't the case. Everything was just so fast. So, of course, I did. The next morning, because I stayed all night.
Yeah.
I did not leave. And the next morning, I took it in. I said, here's the revised answer. I went line by line. I know, because she signed the verification the night before, because I've never done it before.
Right.
So I had the verification, but I wanted her to know I did not give him this authority to file the answer to this until I went line by line. And I apologize. I mean, no problem.
Okay.
I think she forgave me.
Who else? Yes, sir. Norman?
So what are you thinking about how you can avoid having this happen in the future? I mean, how are you going to learn from this failure?
Well, first of all, like I said, I have a good relationship with the county attorney. This was a new county attorney. And so I will make sure that first they don't assign anybody green. I mean, he had been there like a month. And so for that sort of case, you don't want to have the newest person on staff trying to respond for an elected official. And so I've had a conversation with the county attorney about the experience of the attorney that we need to represent us. And I will have to make sure that I look at everything before I tell the clerk, just sign it. I mean, I was like, just sign it. And we like had interaction and I was furious. How could you not sign it? I'm telling you, I read everything. So I will make sure that the next time.
Hang on, I didn't give you your sticker yet. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would bet that you're not the only one in the room who has made a mistake like that. Am I right? But you're the only one who was willing to come and tell us about it. You're a high character person. Look at that story. It's an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you. Okay. That is accountability. We move on. Again, this is a broad overview. There's a lot of material to look at, but let's take a look at courage. When you hear the word courage or someone mentions, oh, he or she was courageous, what image comes to mind? What image comes to mind? Might it be something like this? Or maybe this. Mark Twain said, why is it that physical courage is so common, but moral courage is so rare? We're not talking about the strength to get into battle. I couldn't do that. But we're talking about standing up to people in authority. So there's a story in the book. It's one of my favorite ones in the book. I interviewed a fellow named Kenneth Meyer, who is Vice President for Human Resources at Community Network in New York. And he told me about a fire safety engineer he worked with who had just started at this institution many years ago, and he got a call from the vendor of the fire extinguishers and said, you know, it's time for the checkup. And so this fellow I call Marvin said, well, you know, when are you going to come by and take a look at our fire extinguishers in the hospital? And the fella said, well, I don't come by. Here's what you do is you walk to every fire extinguisher and make a mark and let me know you've done that, and then I'll send you a check. And Marvin wasn't really sure what he was hearing. Wait a minute. You're telling me you'll send me a check, a personal check, if I go around and write down my initials? And the vendor said, absolutely, expecting, you know, Marvin to say, well, great, sign me up. And he said, first of all, a couple things have to happen. Number one, this has got to stop right now. I don't know what happened before me, but this has got to stop. And number two, if this ever happens again, if you ever pull anything like this again, I'll make sure that you don't work any longer. Now, now you think about it, I'm bringing this up with respect to courage because, you know, we tend to think of in hospital, who are the clients of a hospital? Well, in a sense, patients are, but also in a sense, vendors are, because without the vendors paying the money, like here, without the sponsors paying for this event, this wouldn't have happened. So for him to stand up to a vendor at the beginning of his career and say, this is corrupt, you have to stop, took a lot of courage. Let me ask you this. Had Marvin gone along with the scheme, what might have happened? What might have happened in the hospital? So let's say that there's a birthday celebration and someone's putting a candle on a little cupcake, right? And lights the candle, blows out the match, tosses it into a waste paper basket, but the match isn't extinguished, and it catches fire. How many lives might have been lost simply because of this corrupt practice? What this guy did took courage. And I asked Ken Meyer, you know, this was 20 years ago, what happened to this fella? He's now a parish priest. And so, again, this is somebody who has a lifelong commitment to doing things that are courageous, and this is just one example. Now, isn't that somebody you'd want on your team? Somebody who's willing to stand up? But now the thing is, from an employer's point of view, think about this. Would you want someone on your team who's willing to stand up to people in authority? What if the person he or she stands up to in authority is you? Why would you want a troublemaker like that on your team, right? How do you respond? Why would you want someone who's willing, who has a history of standing up to people in a position of power? Sometimes we in authority need to be told this is not right. What'll happen if we're not, again, the praise down, criticize up model of management that Ken Blanchard talks about, this is what we're talking about. People who are willing to be criticized, these are the strong, these are the courageous leaders. So close to the last exercise, Please describe a time when you had to disagree with someone in authority and stand your ground. It could be in the court system. It could be in your previous job. Maybe it was in your community. What was the situation? How did the other person react? And what did you do? Again, please describe a time when you had to disagree with someone in authority and stand your ground. What was the situation? How did the other person react? And what did you do? Please take a moment to do that. Okay, everybody, now this is very important. Please stand. Please stand right now. Okay, please stretch if you can over your head. To the left. To the right. And now sit down. I think it's cruel to make people sit for more than an hour, that's all. I just wanted... So who's got a good story about courage? Please come up, ma'am. Thank you so much. What's your name? Where are you from? And tell us your story.
Deborah Garner. I'm from Oklahoma, a limited jurisdiction court. Hadn't been there 2 weeks, and of course, you're very observant about things that go on in your department, and I happened to find out that our prosecuting attorney was allowing his private attorney friends to use our courtroom as mock court trials. In other words, prepping clients, but using our courtroom for that purpose. And I immediately had to, you know, I was a brand new employee, so I would think most people would be very uncomfortable with this challenge. But I had to do something because I felt so strongly that it was a misuse of public funds. You know, that courtroom is funded by the public, and they were using it for private purposes. But this was the prosecuting attorney who was allowing this to happen. So I had to take action, and so I felt like that took a tremendous amount of courage on my part. But when I did it...
What was the action you took? What was the action you took?
Well, I had to go over to administration, who is over all of us, and just let them know that this could not be allowed in my ethical mind, you know, my mindset. But, you know, they questioned me. Why do you feel this is wrong? And I had to tell them why I felt so strongly about it, that it was a misuse of public funds. And only then did they, you know, if I hadn't had that explanation and just said that personally I don't like this, I think it might have continued.
What were you afraid of in anticipation of going to administration? What were you afraid might happen to you?
Well, honestly, I didn't care what happened to me. I just felt so strongly that this was a misuse of public funding because we're all the public, you know, and I felt like it was a misuse of my tax dollars. And so actually it set the tone for the rest of our my relationship with the prosecuting attorney. So
what questions do you have for
very
yes,
uncomfortable in the future.
Yes. Thank you.
I'm curious, did the prosecuting attorney allow all members of the bar to use the courtroom if they so wished, or was it just his private friends?
Just his private friends.
Anything else? I feel that the reason these kind of shenanigans go on is because there aren't people like you who stand up to it. Once someone says, wait a minute, this is wrong, and being willing to be the bad person for a while, right, in the administration ties.
But forever now. Let's just clarify that. It's
mean,
forever
really,
now.
Come on. Why? I feel like, so at the end of that movie, Falling Down, where Michael Douglas says to Robert Duvall, I'm the bad guy? Why are you the bad guy? Thank you for your courage. Here's your sticker. That deserves a sticker. All right. And now we're going to end with a quality of high character people that's really difficult to talk about, and it's humility. And I'll explain in a moment why it's hard to talk about, but here's how the Oxford Dictionary defines humility: a modest or low view of one's importance. A modest or low view of one's own importance. Do you agree with that? Now, this is Oxford, so it's got to be right, right? Well, what do you disagree with? Because, you know, actually, if you look at the root word from which we get humility, the Greek word means low. So it is historically accurate, but what's the problem with it? Well, here's someone we can all do without, right? This guy seems to lack humility. You can hear what this guy's saying. I did it, it's all me. Now, the problem with this, the reason why he's not humble, is not because he has a high view of himself, it's because he has a mistaken view of himself. Do we really accomplish all these things on our own? How about this? This mountain climber, you can almost hear what he or she is saying. I can't tell the gender, it doesn't matter. What's he or she saying? Help me out here. You know what they're saying. I did it. I did it. Oh, yes, you did it, but what? Did anybody contribute to your success? Who made the backpack? Who made the Gore-Tex sneakers? Who was looking after your kids while you were training for this? There's a whole network of people that's responsible for our accomplishments. People who aren't humble don't even pay attention to that. It's all about me. So the humble person says, not that I'm unimportant. The humble person says, I recognize that I'm part of a web of connections, that we're all contributing to one another's success, and he or she recognizes that fact. And this is why it's really worth looking for this trait in people who you want to hire to work for you. Because these are the folks who are really going to improve morale, because they're the ones who are constantly saying, it wasn't just me, everybody else helped me. There's a wonderful book I commend to you called Give and Take. This book changed my life. This guy, you'll see that he endorsed my book, but I felt this way before he did that. In fact, I asked him because I thought so much of his work. It's called Give and Take. The guy's name is Adam Grant. He's the youngest tenured professor at the Wharton School of Business at University of Pennsylvania. And he categorizes the world into three groups of people. People he calls takers, and we all know who these are. They look at any situation and they ask, what's in it for me? And they make their decision based on what they're going to get out of it. Then they're what Adam Grant calls matchers. It's really Silence of the Lambs, right? Clarice, quid pro quo, Hannibal Lecter says. There we go with Hannibal Lecter again. I'll give you something if you give me something. But the people who are truly successful in the long run turn out to be the givers. And these are people whose primary orientation is to giving, is to helping others and to recognizing the accomplishments that other people make. It's not self-denial. Adam Grant uses the term otherish as opposed to selfish. You're not denying yourself, but your primary orientation is on helping people. And it turns out people like that tend to not only succeed themselves, their organizations succeed. And humility is a big, big part of this. So the reason why humility is difficult to talk about is because the moment you start talking about how humble you are, this guy Harris, what was his last name? He wrote this book called Humble Brag. He looked at, he was involved in Parks and Recreation. He looks at all these tweets and he talks, these tweets will begin like, I'm just so humble to have been given the Nobel Prize in Peace. I'm just so humble. Well, shouldn't it be somebody else saying that about you? I mean, really. Again, there's nothing wrong with tooting your own horn. It's how you toot it. So how should you talk about your humility in your job interview, or when you're interviewing someone? What will you look for? You'll look for how they talk about people who have inspired them. And when I was thinking about, because I wanted to come up with an example in my own life for this book, when I was, who's here from Texas? Oh, great. What city? Dallas. Sorry to hear that. I'm from San Antonio. No, Dallas is a great town. San Antonio, grew up there. There was a deli I worked in high school called Locks, L-O-X, Stock and Bagels. Cute. It was the kind of place where, now this is in the 70s, bagels weren't as popular as they are now. I remember this customer came up to me, big 10-gallon hat, and he said, looked at me and says, boy, give me a dozen of them chocolate donuts. And they were pumpernickel bagels. Boy, was he surprised when he got those. And I was, ugh, ain't sweet at all. But I was hired there to, make sandwiches and all this. And there was this woman named Emily who was essentially our janitor. I don't think she had graduated high school. She had a very good work ethic. She always had a smile on her face. And at the end of the summer, the manager, the owner of the place, decided he wanted to go back to Chicago and get someone to take over the business. So he could, now this is before Craigslist, he could have put an ad in the San Antonio Express News. He could have reached out to the people he knew at other restaurants. He turned to Emily. He hired Emily to take over. This woman moved overnight from janitor to manager and owner of this restaurant. But the thing that stands out about Emily is not her meteoric rise to fame, it's how she treated everybody the day after, which is she didn't treat people any differently. She talked to me exactly the same way she did before, and I've never forgotten that. I want to treat people the way she did, that she recognized the contributions we all made and never pulled rank on us. So in this final exercise, I want you to please talk about someone you've worked with whose humility inspired you. Why do you consider the person humble? How did his or her humility affect you? And what have you done differently as a result of your experience with him or her? So please talk for a moment about a humble person in your life, maybe in your family, maybe at work, someone who's inspired you, and why you consider this person to be humble. Please take a moment to do that. Okay, who's got a good humility story? I want to make sure that we honor our commitment to ending on time. Steve, thank you. It only took 4 times, but I got your name right eventually. Okay, everybody, get ready to drill down with Steve.
I don't need a sticker.
Oh, boy.
Several years back, I was working for the Department of Defense, and I knew this janitor. Actually, it was a lot of years back now I think about it, because I was only in my 20s. And I knew this janitor. He was an old black guy, and he was just a cool guy, and I would talk to him every day about sports and things like that. And he was just always so nice and things like that. And then he passed away. And so I went to his funeral. And at his funeral, I found out he was a Medal of Honor winner in the military. He was the cook in the movie Pearl Harbor. He was the cook that ran out onto the deck and shot down some Japanese Zeros. He was that person, and I never knew. I never knew after 3 years of communicating. And the thing I learned about that experience is, you know what? Slow down. Take your time and drill down to who that person really is. You know what? This guy had such a rich history, and I often think, I'm 30 years later, I often think how much I missed out by not trying to find out more about him.
What a story. Any questions for Steve about the gentleman he's talking about or about his story? Thank you. That was a very moving story. Very, very nice. Thank you, Steve. So what's it all about? I want to share with you, if you're looking to hire high character people, and I think you've seen plenty of evidence of why that's a smart thing to do, I want to talk about what you should be looking for, all right? So I'm going to read this to you just because every word really does matter, but just know that if you don't get it all, it's in this book. So the first thing that you as an employer should be looking for, incorporate the 10 qualities of high character employees into the core competencies that your organization expects from its employees. And if you don't have core competencies listed, this would be a good time to do this. It surprises me how few businesses actually put these on their website. Smart ones do, the big ones do. Sometimes you have to dig around a bit, but this is something that should be front and center on the home page of your website. Number 2, in job descriptions. When you prepare a job description, think about how this whole hour started out. All about knowledge and skill. When you prepare a job description, discuss character as an essential component of the position, not something that adds value to it. I can't stand that corporate speak, value add. What a meaningless phrase this is. This doesn't add value. This is the DNA of your company, of your organization, of your court. Doing the job well has to mean acting with honor and integrity, not merely hitting sales numbers, closing deals, or doing the job that's required of you in court management. In job postings, mention up front that the person you're looking for, the people you're looking for are people of high character, and don't be afraid to use words like honest, fair, ethical, honorable, integrity in the ad. Remember, in one of those ads, the word ethics does appear, but they're just looking for someone with knowledge of ethics. And we want more than people who know something about ethics. Number 3, add some or all of the qualities of high character employees to your company's mission, vision, and value statements, and explain why successful applicants will be in alignment with those values. Make it clear that your organization considers knowledge and skill necessary but not sufficient. High character is also an essential element of employees, and that's why, as employers, you should be bringing this up in the interview. Number 4, the stories that we heard from you today, they're wonderful stories, all of them, but also in the book you're about to read, illustrate why high character people are crucial to a company's or a court's success. Gather stories like the ones you've heard from your organization and present them at meetings. Why, you have weekly staff meetings. Wouldn't it be cool to hear a story like Steve's at the meeting? Every year, the CEO of a major home improvement company shares with employees the stories of 5 high-character people like Emiliano, who tracked down the owner of a $15,000 diamond ring that he discovered in the store's parking lot. Emiliano received a prestigious award and a bonus for which his colleagues gave him a standing ovation. Now, what's the message of that exercise? Everyone in the audience is saying, I want to be like that person. I didn't want to say it in the book, but the company in question is the Home Depot, and I spoke there last year, and I gave a shortened version of the keynote there, and it was packed, and it was packed because there was free lunch. I know they weren't there and I mean, really, it was not, I just felt like comedians talk about dying up there. That's how I felt like. And I was, because like, who am I to them? But then these 5 employees are paraded and presented to the group. This one guy found a $15,000 diamond ring, and everybody's looking up. Everyone's paying attention because these are stories from the organization. That's why, and so yes, I didn't take it personally that they didn't bring me back. And number 5, the 10 qualities of high character employees should be a critical factor for making hiring, promotion, and get this, termination decisions. Why fire only because they're not knowledgeable or skilled enough? Why not also fire because they're not accountable, because they have a terrible work ethic, because they're not humble, because they're ingrates? In both job interviews and performance reviews, use the questions at the end of each chapter, like the ones that we've had you write about, to help you evaluate in behavioral terms the character of applicants or employees seeking raises or promotions. That's why when Roderick presented his story, I wanted you to ask questions because he gave you kind of the view from 10,000 feet. But I wanted to put some meat on the bones, and in the questions you asked, you did. You helped him to make it very specific. The goal is to discover the extent to which the person's conduct is consistent with the company's values. What questions do you have about the material that we've talked about? Well, if you, oh, yes, ma'am?
As you spoke, we have what we call KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities.
You have KSAs?
KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Knowledge, skills, and abilities.
Yeah, we use KSAs, knowledge, skills, and abilities, on our job descriptions. And indeed, our hiring process has just been completely revamped to behavioral interviewing, where we ask people for examples of what their KSAs. I'm just curious, is there any legal implication to making integrity and character such a part of hiring and firing? I'm thinking it's subjective. When I say, what do you know about court transcription, that's one thing. When I say, are you honest? Give me a story about your courage. And I hire somebody else. Can someone say, well, she used her personal values to make this decision?
It's great. These are wonderful questions. I'm not an attorney and I don't play one on TV. But what I will say is I would not ever want to ask someone, are you honest? Because if someone asked me that, I'd begin to think, well, what do they know about me? Oh, she knows the truth. She knows the truth about me. It's describe a situation. Now, I don't know. Is there an attorney in the audience? Remember Bugs Bunny's there? Oh, well then you should know.
I don't.
I don't know.
I'm asking you. But that would be my concern. Would be that somebody would say she imposed her personal values and she admires me for calling out a judge, or she admired that guy for calling out a judge, and the other person, and I never had the opportunity to do that.
Good. This is why we don't want to relegate honesty to the personal value category. This should be an institutional value. But one thing that you do raise implicitly is the question of bias. And I do talk about how sometimes it's worth saying, now wait a minute, do I not want this candidate because of something objectively they said or because of some bias I might have towards someone? So it's worth checking in to see how your own biases might be limiting you. Yeah, and you sir wanted to ask a question, right? You had your hand up? Okay, let's see.
I would like to know, how do we take this information that we've learned today, this sort of virtue theory that you've given us, okay, an idea of virtue, right? That work is not just simply knowledge and skill, but it's virtue. That you have to do it well, not simply that you know and you do it, but you do it well, you do it within the, okay. How do we do that in a world, or how do we look for people with character and all that in a world that is increasingly, at least in the way I read the world today, our world, a world that is increasingly finding more and more philosophically interesting, sophistic ways of justifying dishonesty,
So I guess the question is, how do we make this operational? That book is all about doing what we talked about in a very broad sense. It's the questions you ask, it's how you ask them, it's what information you gather from them. But really, what it really comes down to are the stories. And the reason people have told me they like this is not my writing skill, it's these amazing stories that I've collected from around the world, and these are the stories you should be collecting at your place of work. And also, not just when you're hiring people, making it a part of the culture at the staff meeting, just like I would love to be at a staff meeting and hear what Roderick had to say or what Steve had to say. This is not an overnight thing either. We're talking about a huge social change. This is not going to happen overnight. Yes, ma'am. You wanted, yes. Will you pass that back? Thank you.
Have you had people that instituted this practice into like performance evaluations? Because really that's part of examples of the stories that it seems like you're referencing, where you would encourage the honesty or something, where you would give examples during their annual evaluations to incorporate the integrity into that process.
There's a company I interviewed called DDI, Dimensions Development International, that has questions, and Adam Grant and I have been going back and forth about whether it makes sense to have multiple choice questions. I don't think so, because it may be the beginning of a discussion, but it can't substitute for the kind of give and take that we've seen here today. And we're just starting on this process. You can be a part of this movement. I really want, don't you agree this should be a part of an international movement of looking at character in employees? So if you really believe that, then you will be willing to pose for a selfie. I don't know. I'm making a video of this wonderful experience. I've had such a great time. Pat called me when I was giving a talk in Maui and told me about you guys, and I said, I want to do that. So you've all been really wonderful, and I hope you'll allow me to express my gratitude to you by taking a picture of everybody. Is that wrong? Is that wrong? If you don't want to be in the picture, that's fine. But please, actually, you know what? I don't even think you have to stand up. Okay, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. That was anticlimactic, wasn't it? How about, okay, now should we do another Naked Rock thing? That seemed to get everybody excited. Okay, I'll tell you what. What we're going to do on the count of 3 is we're going to stand up and yell Naked Rocks, all right? And that'll show the people who didn't come. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Make 'em rocks! Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. And now we're going to